Welcome to day 2 of review. Today we're reviewing ratios and proportionality and also percent. I have the notes pre-written out for you just because it makes it neater to do. Let's take it section by section. This first section is about ratios. A ratio is a comparison of two quantities. Let's make that a little bit bigger. This is super important. They must be set up correctly and be sure to use labels. And I'll show you down here what I mean by labels. Labels are words. So if you have a ratio of 3 boys to 4 girls. If you're doing it as students, that's a total of 7 students to 4 girls. Or it's a ratio of 4 girls to 3 boys, 3 boys to 4 girls. The labels are the words you have to use. A rate, it's a ratio with 2 different units. So here the units 5.25 to 6 pounds. It's a ratio of the 2 units of dollars and pounds. Here you've got 250 miles in 4 hours. So it's a ratio with miles and hours. And 49 feet in 5 seconds. The 2 different units are feet and seconds. A unit rate is a ratio with a quantity of 1. So unit means 1, like unicycle has a 1 tire. So you want to find the price for 1 pound, or how many miles you can go in 1 hour, miles per hour, or how many feet something will move in 1 second, feet per second. Okay, let's move over to this one, proportions. A proportion is 2 equal ratios. They can be used to find a missing quantity. Must be set up correctly. Be sure to use labels. Important again. You solve for the missing quantity. Reread the problem, make sure you answer the question. Okay, so let's look at this. So if miles per hour is 432 miles in 6 hours, how many miles can you go in 8 hours? Now there's no easy way to get from 6 to 8, so you're going to have to do cross products. 6x is 432 times 8. 6x equals 432 times 8. Divide both sides by 6. And normally I'd have you come straight down with algebra, but there's no room here. So x is 576 miles you can go in 8 hours. Okay, let's come down to measurement conversions. Measurement conversions is changing between units. So inches to yards, kilograms to grams. So in this situation, inches to yards, there's 36 inches in 1 yard. There's 36 inches in 1 yard, so how many inches are in 5 yards? And in this case, you can go from 1 to 5. You can just multiply by 5, so you don't have to do cross products. So the top is 36 times 5, so there's 180 inches. 180 inches in 5 yards. Okay, last one on this page. If you had a chart here, let's start like this. If you had a chart like this, where hours is on this side, miles is on this side, they chose to use H and M instead of X and Y to make it really clear that H is hours and M is miles. You have to look at pairs that you have to figure out how you get from one to the other. So if you have 2 here and 100 here, to get from H to M, you have to multiply by 150. So, by 50. 2 times 50 is 100. But the very next one, to be able to get from here to here, you have to divide by 50. 300 divided by 50 is going to be 6. And then you just check. 6 times 50 is 300. That's good. 7 times 50 is 350. And this last one, 1500 divided by 50 is 30. So to be able to write an equation from that, you say, well, what did I have to do to H to get M? H times 50 is M. So we're going to write it as M equals 50H. And that's because, if this is the Y, you always write it like Y on this side, Y equals, and the X over here. Miles equals 50H. Miles equals hours times 50. going 50 miles an hour. And then if you're going to graph it, they did already label this as hours and miles. So 2 hours, you go 100 miles. The next unit is 6 hours for 300 miles. And then 7 hours for 350 miles. Moving on, 2%. Okay. Let's look at this first one, the top left. Percent means out of 100. So per means out of, and cent is 100. And for these hundreds boxes, 30 are shaded, so that's 30%. 35 are shaded, that's 35%. That's 50%. 66 and 2/3%, that's 4/6, which is 2/3. 66. If you did 2 divided by 3, you get 0.666 going on and on, but it rounds to 66 and 2/3. Okay, benchmark percents, those are things you should memorize. So pretty obvious. I think most of you have these memorized. 0 is 0%, a fourth is 25%, half is 50%, 3/4 is 75%, and 1 is 100%. The thirds are weirder, thirds and eighths. 0 and 100 stay the same, but 1/3 is 33 and 1/3%. 2/3 is 66 and 2/3%. Which is, if you look at 33 and 1/3 and 66 and 2/3, 33 times 2 is 66. 1/3 times 2 is 2/3, so that all makes sense. And if we come down to tenths, tenths are very friendly with percent to get from 10 to 100. So 1/10 is 10%, 3/10 30, 5/10 50, 7/10 70, 9/10 90%. Okay, moving up to the top right. Percent proportions. This is something that's memorized when you have to memorize this and use it when you're solving percent word problems. So percent out of 100 equals part out of whole. And we'll see how we use this here. And again, percent is out of 100. You set up a percent proportion like this. Percent out of 100 equals part out of a whole when you're solving a word problem. Solve for the missing number. One of those, you'll always have 3, and one of those is going to be missing. So you solve for the one that's missing. And then reread the problem to make sure you answered the question that they were asking. Okay, so here. 72% of students buy their lunch at school. If there are 300 students at school, then how many buy their lunch? So first we're going to write this down so we memorize it. Percent over 100 equals part over whole. And then we fill in the things we know. It's 72%, so 72 out of 100 equals L for how many people buy their lunch out of the whole school is 300. And then because these are friendly numbers, we don't have to do cross products. To get from 100 to 300, it's times 3, and 72 times 3 is 216. So L is 216. There's 216 students buying lunch. Okay, let's do the next one. 64 students buy their lunch at school. This is 16% of the total student body. And student body just means how many people are at school. How many students are in the school? So again, we start with the proportion that we should be memorizing. Here, let's get this a little bigger. Percent over 100 equals part over whole. So it said 16%, so we put 16 over 100 is 64 kids buy their lunch at school, and then S is how many students. I had S be how many students are in the school altogether. And this, you could do cross products always, but I know that 16 times 4 is 64. So 100 times 4 is 400. So there's 400 students in the school. And if you wanted to check that, you would do 64 divided by 400 and see if you get 0.16, 16%. And you will. And that is our review of ratios, proportions, and percents.